Welcome to Beyond the Fail, the podcast where we talk to leaders and entrepreneurs about their biggest business failures. We'll deep dive into how they overcame these setbacks, the lessons they learned from them, all to help you gain valuable insights. Failure is an essential part of the business journey, as well as being the key to success. So we're here to show you how to thrive from it. Mark Lloyd is a multiple business owner, property investor, developer, mentor, and trainer. And he was previously awarded the top 10 property coaches in the UK by Yahoo Finance. He has over 30 years of experience in business and has started numerous companies in many industries, including finance, construction, and utilities. He sold one of his previous companies, a telecoms business, for over 7 figures after building it up to 130 plus staff. Mark talks today about dealing with bankruptcy, having a 6-figure invoice land on his desk with no way to pay, and the impact this had on him personally. This is Beyond the Fail with Mark Lloyd. Mark, how are you doing? Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Team Jizz, yep, fantastic. Thanks. Had a really great day, and now still into the high with you.
Well, hopefully I can live up to the hype. Thanks so much for being here, and really great to have you on finally. I know we obviously... Mark, where did it kind of all start for you?
I've been self-employed, running my own account really for over 30 years now. So I suppose really it started around about 1986, probably. So before you were born, probably.
Yeah. No, I was a few years old. Yeah.
Okay. But my first job, my one and only job, was in a bank. Actually, I started working in a bank, and I was really going nowhere fast. I'd come from a council estate. I was quite a poor background, and I had bad family background as well. I needed to leave home, and I left home as soon as I could, which was after I passed my exams. And I joined the labour market in 1979, which is when Margaret Thatcher first got in, and there was no jobs. Literally, I think there was 3 million unemployed and growing, and the Conservatives got in, and the unemployment grew even further. So,
well, how did that feel? How did that feel entering a labour market at that young age? Obviously, with the the background that you just talked about, to that kind of enormity and that kind of large obstacle.
Well, I was motivated to find something. I've always wanted to earn money, and whilst I was at school, I had 3 jobs, 3 part-time jobs, because I don't want to dwell too much on my childhood, but it was rough, And any money I earned, I had to give half of that through to the family. So I was constantly wanting to earn money, and when I kind of left school, those jobs disappeared because they were kind of designed for part-time kids, and I wanted a full-time job. And although I say that banking was my first job, actually I had a job just prior to that, which was working as a garage in a petrol garage. Literally, click the button.
What, mechanic?
Click the button, you fill your pump up.
Right. Oh, one of those. Right. Okay.
And that was the first job that came up, and I had to take it because in those days, if a job came up in the job centre, when you had to go to the job centre first of all to sign on. Sign on to the dole. That's where the term come from. And if a job came up, you had to take it. You had to go and be presented. And unless you had a valid reason not to take the job. So I took this job. It was 3 miles from where I lived. I didn't drive. None of my family drove. And I walked every single day. And I worked 4 days a week, 12-hour shifts, and then 3 days off.
Wow.
And one day, a friend of mine that I knew from school came in and just filling up his car and said, what are you up to? Blah, blah. And he was working for a bank, Barclays. I said, no, how did you find out about that? He said it was just, he saw an advert in the paper. So I thought, I now started searching for job. I attended an interview and started working with NatWest Bank in late part of 1979.
Amazing. Who needs LinkedIn when you've got people that come to your garage every day that you can network with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about networking. People I knew at school, and I did okay at school. Some better than certainly what he'd done, and I thought, well, okay, if he's got a job in a bank, I must be able to. And that's the only reason I ended up at a bank.
And you mentioned about being self-employed for 30 years and obviously having 3 jobs in school, and you mentioned like the necessity of essentially having those 3 jobs in school. But would you describe yourself as an entrepreneur? Was that entrepreneurial drive that was leading you to all those jobs, or was it the necessity?
I don't think it was entrepreneurial drive. I think it was more necessity. There was nobody in my family that had that entrepreneurial drive. My dad was a factory worker. He worked in a factory. In fact, by the age of 19, when I started working at the bank, I was earning nearly double what my dad was. And that kind of caused frictions, which is why I also left home at that point as well. And I think the entrepreneurial bit probably came later, because I was pretty immature. I earned money, I spent it like as quickly as it was coming through the door. Yeah, I was having a good time. I moved to London. I worked in the West End of London, which is a fantastic place for a young lad. And so many, I know, cookies. It's just a big, huge cookie jar. And where do we go next? So we go to that bar, or we go to that restaurant, or we go to that nightclub, or as they were called then, discos. It was great time.
Was some of that because you obviously, you said you had quite a difficult upbringing in terms of money. Do you think then the fact that you were earning a good wage then you were kind of a bit more frivolous with it because you were kind of enjoying what you didn't have previously?
Yeah, absolutely. And I rented a flat in London for a few years before I got promoted, but things kind of changed. There was a guy who was my immediate manager, a guy called Mike Berg. Now, he doesn't know this even to this day, but he sat down with me one day and said, "Look, Mark, nothing's happening. You're going to end up staying where you're staying unless you change." And he just gave me a few things to read, and these are all kind of bank manual stuff to learn, but also kind of helped change my attitude, because I was cocky. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder from my background, because everybody I was working with had all come from middle class, rich families. Here's me, council kid, no money, family, no money, just about buying their own house. So it was a new environment for me, and I think something what was foreign to me. But he sat me down, and from that point, literally a year later, I was promoted. A year later after that, I was a manager of a bank, and I was mid-20s.
Was he your mentor?
Yeah, I'd say he's my very first mentor, without a shadow of a doubt. And I say, I think he might still be alive, because he was only about 8 or 9 years older than me, so he should definitely still be alive, hopefully. I have no idea where he is in the country. But yeah, he certainly left a lasting impression on me, and that kind of changed my whole attitude and approach. And that's probably, maybe he ignited something in me, but maybe I did have the entrepreneurial thing there, but I needed someone else to ignite it. And I think he was the person that did it.
So what led you to going on to obviously quite a good trajectory in the bank, but then swapping that for being self-employed?
The need to earn more money. So us bank employees are okay paid. I wouldn't say they're high salaries, because you get a lot of benefits within a bank. And one of those things in those days was really good, which was cheap mortgages. So when you're paying interest rates of 9-10% and you've got a mortgage at 3%, that's a major benefit.
Because of the fact you work for the bank?
Exactly.
Wow. That's a good reason.
And of course, not a lot of reason why most people didn't leave the bank as well, because you were tied into that mortgage. So I started looking around for higher paying jobs. I had an interest in the stock market. I was interested in all sorts of things like that, and thought, okay, what if I went for work for a broker? And then I saw an advert for, I think it was a life assurance salesperson. And I went along to that. And I got through to the final kind of half dozen or so people, and I didn't get the job. But they said the only reason I didn't have the job was because I didn't have selling experience. So I thought, okay, I took that on board. And I then kept looking, and I came across an advert for selling life assurance again, but on a self-employed basis. And I went for the interview, and they did some psychometric testing on me, which I'd never had done before, didn't have any idea what it was. And the guy there, Glenn Davis, who I'm still in contact with today, sat me down and he said, Mark, you have got amazing attributes according to these tests we've done that you will succeed as a self-employed salesperson. Now, I'd never sold before.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I heard crap. I was going to say another word then, but I thought, I wasn't sure he was trying to sell me into it or what. So I
This is a pyramid scheme. Is that what you're worried about?
No, and then I brought my wife along to the interview. I said, we have a chat as well. I said to her, what do you think? Because I really want to do this. And I made the decision to leave a safe, secure job with a cheap mortgage. My wife was pregnant, just about to have our first child.
Wow, lot on the line.
And I'm leaving my job. Within my first year of being self-employed, I was the top sales associate for the first year.
So the test was right. It wasn't lying.
It was right. And that was a big learning. I mean, never done sales before. I attended their initial sales training, and there was a few things that came out of that. So they say, well, actually, Mark, you're very good at this particular aspect of sales, which I'd never even considered before. And so I learned as well as the success I got out of it. And I got an award, which is always nice.
I mean, that's an amazing achievement considering you had so much on the line as well. You obviously took a big risk. How did that risk feel, like taking that huge plunge, especially, with the fact that you're going to have a big life change and obviously a big dependence on you to earn money to support your child? How did that feel? What gave you the kind of strength to take that risk?
That's a difficult one. I think after my dad died when I was 25, that also helped change my attitude, by the way, as well, because that you realise then my dad was only in his 40s when he died. You kind of, and I was the eldest one in the family. I was the eldest boy, eldest of 4 boys, and you kind of realise you need to do something with your life, and the effect of Mike talking to me around that same sort of time as my dad died as well, and then Glenn and moving in, and I had supreme confidence, and that's one of the things that I'm probably guilty of, is I do have that. You ask me to do something, I'll do it. I don't usually question. I'll do it to my best of my ability, but I always have a go. And so that's kind of what it was. And I should just add, by the way, my wife wanted to move house at the same time as well. So we're looking for a new house, bigger house. It's a bigger house as well, which I managed to get just before she left the bank. She was in the bank as well. So we managed to get that just before she left the bank. And but I was super motivated. And the downside was I was working longer hours to get the kind of income, lifestyle things that we wanted to pay for.
Did you have any doubts at the time that you wouldn't succeed in that sales job?
Later, yes. After I'd been going a little while, I'd moved away from selling life insurance into selling other things. I've sold quite a lot of things, actually, from home improvements like conservatories, double glazing, kitchens, bathrooms, high ticket items. Kind of see the pattern there. I was attracted to the high ticket because it was high commission.
High commission. Yeah.
So, and that kind of proved a little bit to be part of my downfall in line with what was happening in the economy at the time. I don't want to blame the economy, but in line with that, because whilst I was earning a good income, we were also spending a lot of money. My wife decided not to go back to work. She's just a stay-at-home mum. She'd got a part-time job, but money we were bringing in, we were spending. I was spending, and in fact, I was spending more than I was actually earning. It started building up credit card debt, and when the interest rates really rocketed through the sky, I got to a stage where I thought, yeah, this is ridiculous. I'm building up debt. I now can't pay the mortgage, and I just stopped doing what I was doing. I actually thought, no, that's it. I'm going to stop. I could actually get my mortgage paid, which was my biggest worry, by signing onto the dole. Because at the time, that was what the government offered, so that you could actually get your mortgage paid. So that was the only option I had, in my mind, was to get the mortgage paid and somehow sort out how on earth I'm going to pay back all this credit card debt I built up.
So over what period of time are we talking here? Because obviously you had that new job and you had your child, and then we've gone from that, and it sounded, you said you won an award after 1 year, and obviously top salesperson. How many years span are we talking about between going from that then to essentially signing on the dole?
About 5 years. Wasn't long at all. The timing wasn't great, as I said, with the economy, the way it was as well. But I think, the problem was, I've always, as I said, I've always, I wanted to do things. I'd never been abroad, for example, until I met my wife. So I wanted to go abroad. I wanted to go and see these countries. I'd learned languages at school. I'd learned French, German, and Spanish at school, and I wanted to go and visit these countries and practice some of the languages I'd learned, which I still do today, actually. But of course, living the lifestyle and wanted to keep that lifestyle going, I kind of created an image as well that I was trying to maintain. And that's how I kind of built up the debt as well, trying to keep things going, trying to think, okay, how am I going to pay that this month and pay for that? And then I eventually, as I said, I kind of gave up, and I went to see a firm of accountants to say, what do I do? I can't pay it. I can't make the monthly payments on my credit card. My credit then by that stage was shot. I had CCJs coming at me ears, and I just didn't know what to do. I was still young. I had no one to speak to. Didn't have my dad to speak to. Didn't have anybody, a mentor or any kind at that point to really talk to.
How old were you at the time?
How old was I? I think I was 31, 32.
Sounds like a lot. I mean, it's a lot of weight on your shoulders at 31.
Yeah, my own fault. Yeah, hands up. Nobody else put me there. I did. But they sat me down and gave me two options. One was I went bankrupt, and then that meant I'd have 3 years and I'd be free of everything, or I pay people back, but a pence in the pound, and I opted for paying people back. On reflection, it was not the best decision to make, purely from a financial point of view, but I decided that was the route I wanted to take, and that I was going to pay back as much as I could. And
so why wasn't it the best route? Wouldn't have bankruptcy isn't that such an extreme measure to take on?
Not once you understand bankruptcy law. So although my creditors record was shot, by entering an arrangement to pay back the creditors an amount, my credit record was still shot, but actually for longer. So when I'd finished off paying the arrangement, I still could not do anything credit-wise. I couldn't have a credit card. Luckily, I had a bank account, but I couldn't open up anything new. I couldn't get a mortgage. I couldn't rent either.
Wow.
And the only saving grace there was, at the time, I was just before we lost the house. I had started a company with my plumber, a guy called Andre. It was a central heating company. He was like the technical guy. I was the sales, and we'd started that, and we'd brought in two other people, a guy called Mark and Jackie. And Mark let me stay at his house because I couldn't. Once the house had gone, and I did make sure my wife and daughter had somewhere to live. Any money that we did have went to pay for rent for them, but I had nothing left, and I tried as much as I tried to find somewhere to live. I couldn't. I had nowhere. Everywhere I went, credit search, no chance whatsoever. So I stayed at Mark's house for probably 3, 4, 5 months, something like that.
Wow. And how close were your wife and daughter living?
They were only a few miles away. I remember very much just before we lost the house, I rang Mark from the checkout at Sainsbury's, saying, Mark, and I guess a little bit emotional now thinking about it, but I can't afford to pay for this week's shop. He
What did he do?
came down to the supermarket and paid for me, so I couldn't afford to feed the family.
So this guy was more than a business partner,
Yeah.
really. He was, he was your savior in some ways.
Yes, he was, and he was a great guy to have within the company that we'd set up as well. The four of us. Whilst it was my initial idea, I knew that I couldn't do things without other people there. Andre was the technical help, but I needed other people. Mark and Jackie came. Mark, we met, Andre and I, as part of I think it was a trade organisation he was representing at the time, and he wanted us to join. And he saw what we were doing and the ideas that I had, and I couldn't implement them because I couldn't get access to help it grow the company. And so he came on board. And he was a former general manager with Thomson Directories. Now, I don't know whether you remember Thomson Directories.
Vaguely, yeah.
To the yellow pages. I mean, anybody listening to this now thinking, what on earth are we talking about?
The precursor to, I don't know, Craigslist or something like that,
Precursor to Google, really.
Mm.
So he was general manager there, and he'd set up it on his own, and he saw that we could potentially grow a really decent company here. And so yeah, it was a great guy to have on board.
Did that pressure that you were facing affect your relationship at all, and all of that?
Yeah, we split up. Literally at the time the house was sold, things were quite rough. We had arguments, and it was all, at the end of the day, it was all financially related. And I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope with trying to look after the family, trying to do everything else, the finances, and I couldn't deal with it. Apart from, I made sure they had the house, and I got as much money as I could together to make sure the rent was covered for the first 6 months. And then, again, she probably would have got some help, some state help, but I couldn't, as I said, I didn't have anywhere to live at either. So yeah, I mean, it was extremely difficult, probably one of the lowest points in my life. And it teaches you a lot as well. But also, I think what it changed me quite a bit from being a cocky, bolshy young man into someone now that was a bit more considerate and thoughtful about ideas before I implemented them. So rather than going gung-ho, let's go for it. Let's think about it overnight. If I got an idea, I'd write it down. I'd think about it overnight, and I'd think, okay, yeah, all right, rather than previously, I would have just gone, let's go for it. Let's go now. Let's do it now. And it was always
Was that in life or in business or both?
Kind of both. I have been a little bit impetuous. I didn't have a lot of patience. Now people say to me, I'm very calming when I talk, and I don't sound like I'm rushed, or I don't sound stressed, or I don't sound. So that's why, because I think a little bit more about things rather than rushing in now. And I still make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but they're not the kind of financial mistakes I made previously.
And you mentioned about just, I suppose, going back and circling back to that moment you decided that you're going to go on the dole, and then obviously you spoke to those accountants who advised you to take the sort of credit agreements and things like that rather than the bankruptcy. And then you started this plumbing business. Did you do anything in between? Did you start any other businesses, or did you get any other sort of self-employment?
No, nothing at all. One of the things about signing on the dole as a self-employed person, you didn't receive as much unemployment benefit as a person that's been in a job. So it was barely enough to live on. But I couldn't do anything else, because if you got caught, obviously, you upped for, I don't know, some kind of criminal procedure. So the trying to get started on something was quite difficult, and I had to do that very much on a time kind of basis with Andre initially, and then getting Mark and Jackie in, that kind of helped, so I could share my ideas to move things forward, which they could kind of implement. And they were all aware of my situation. I was totally upfront with all of them. I couldn't go on the bank account. I didn't want to go on the bank account, so from my perspective, I had to trust them implicitly. And even though really I hadn't known them that long.
Yeah. So were you kind of like a silent sort of director in that?
I wasn't even a director. Yeah, I wasn't anything. I wasn't allowed to be. So, yeah, and I mean, we appointed Mark, the other Mark, as kind of head of the company, but I was the sales really for the company, and as things started to improve, we could, because I couldn't get paid initially from the company, so that was how I got around the dole issue. I could start it, but I wasn't being paid, so it didn't really matter. But then once we got to a situation where I could be paid, that's when I came off the dole, and at that point, which was only like 5 or 6 months, that's when I could finally manage to rent somewhere. But again, I still had the same issue because my credit record was shot, and I'd gone into a letting agency, and I said, look, if you're going to do a credit search, let me around and fail.
You're up front.
What I can do is I can pay 6 months rent up front, and I'll pay the monthly rent as well. And they spoke to a landlord and said, yeah, okay. And that got me back into living somewhere on my own. And then things progressed from there.
How did you keep going during that time? Because you obviously, kind of split up with your wife. You had this huge sort of debt mounting over you, and then you were starting a new business. How did you manage all those things together?
Very stressful. A lot of sleepless nights. Sitting there wondering, what the hell am I doing? Partly suicidal. I think, I sort of turned to drink as well. I was drinking a lot more than I'd ever done before because I needed some kind of solace, no one to talk to.
Of course. Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you're in that kind of frame of mind, and alcohol just worsens it. So, you feel like, why am I continuing? Why am I here? To be honest with you, the only thing really probably kept me going was my daughter. Otherwise, I probably would have done something stupid.
And what was the kind of turning point out of all of this then? Because obviously that was the sort of the low point. How did you start to sort of turn things around? What happened to the plumbing business? Did that succeed?
Yeah, that succeeded. We ended up selling that company. A couple of changes happened. I mean, Andre left the company. He decided he wanted to do something different. He actually became an airline pilot from becoming a plumber. Left school without any qualifications. And that's what he does today. He's an airline pilot. Mark, unfortunately, died of cancer. So it left me and Jackie. But in the process, we'd set up three or four companies, I think, within that space as well. So not in that space, but just within us. So we had the central heating company, which we sold. We had a utilities company, a telecommunications company, and an IT company. The IT company wasn't a great success. I knew nothing about IT, and they were relying on me partly for sales, and then we had to get someone in to try and do that. And to me, it was too complex. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't sell it. So our largest company became the telecommunications company. We merged the utilities side with the telecommunications, and the way the utilities one came up, and it was just I stumbled across this by accident. When the government of the day decided to deregulate the energy markets, so you could then choose your supplier, which seems foreign to anybody today. Then you can choose your supplier, so you can now suddenly choose your supplier. And I started seeing some of these people selling contracts, like gas contracts, electricity contracts, and so on. And I approached Mark and Jackie and Andre. I said, "Look, why don't we do this? Yeah, there's a huge opportunity here. There's a chance for people to choose their own supplier." And none of them could see it. I said, right, okay, let me just show you. And I put them onto various energy suppliers. I said, look, these are the new energy suppliers that they'd never heard of before. These are new energy suppliers. They're looking to enter the market, and they're offering a competitive advantage. Let's get in there. Let's build a sales team, and let's get cracking. And that's what we did. We actually built up a sales team of 160 people. We were doing something like 200 contracts a week, but we were only being paid, I don't say only, but we were being paid, I think it was 25 or 30 pounds per contract, but times by 200 a week.
Per week, yeah.
As the market changed, we were being paid £100, £200, £300 a contract, as it became harder to actually sell those. And then one day, one of our sales guys went into a small telecommunications reseller, got their electricity contract signed up, and he's turned around and said, "Why don't you sell telephone numbers?" We thought, okay, what's the story behind that? So we started to sell telephone numbers, and after about 6 months, we thought, that's waste of space. There's no money in it. We get paid a little bit of commission, and then nothing happens. Nobody's using the numbers. And what we were selling was the modern day equivalent of 0345 numbers.
Okay, so that business doubles.
Numbers. But after about 6 months, we suddenly had a check through the post. It was about $6,000. And that was for 1 week's revenue on one phone number. Because one of the early telephone numbers one of our sales guys had sold was to a small company called Whitbread Breweries.
Oh, wow.
Who were just launching a brand called Premier Inns.
Right.
And the number they bought was for their central reservation number.
Wow.
So our telecommunications company became our biggest company.
Did you know you were going to get commission on the actual phone calls?
Yes. We'd sold quite a few numbers and nobody had used, there'd been no commission.
Okay.
When this check suddenly appears out of the blue, so wow, what is this? So then we started to focus very much more on telecommunications because we could see the routes that we could get down and where we could get that recurring income coming through every single month.
Amazing. I mean, that's quite a turnaround, isn't it? From, that sort of low point of the bankruptcy and, those sort of suicidal thoughts that you mentioned to, essentially having a kind of conglomerate business. You mentioned the IT business didn't do so well. What happened to that?
We just closed it. Didn't know any money. It was, just I guess an experiment. We were kind of trying to think of things that were current where we could use our sales expertise, but with IT, it was very much a technical sale, which we weren't really used to. So when we got some technical sales guys in, we couldn't. They were difficult to manage. They were very technical, which I'm not. I can be when I want to be, but if I don't enjoy it, I can't see the route to finding the money at the end, if you like, I'm not interested. So we decided to let them go. There was a long lead-in sale time as well, which I didn't like either. So we wait 6 months to get a deal and it might not happen. So, and of course, in the meantime, you were paying their salaries, which was being funded out of the other companies. So was this on the back of you'd already established the telecommunications and the utilities companies? Yep. So how long into that did you launch the IT company? Probably about a year after.
Okay. So not that long, really. You were still kind of growing the other businesses.
Yeah, I think the thing is, because of the way they operate, they were relatively straightforward businesses. I mean, when you're in sales, the products, what you need to know about the product, it's kind of secondary to the way you operate. As long as you can manage the sales side of things, then you should be able to produce income, which we weren't able to do with the IT side. That was the difficulty we found there. Lesson learned. So keep things simple. Don't try and do too many things that you don't understand. So focusing then, as the utilities side started to dry up, and focusing on the telecommunications side, which is really the best thing we ever did. And I say, in the meantime, Andre moved on, Mark passed away, left myself and Jackie. And we sold that company in 2009.
The IT company, do you think that would have been different if you, I suppose, weren't focused on the other two? If you'd given it, you spread too thin is essentially the thing what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I've been asked that a couple of times, and I think there was 4 of us, and the other Mark was more in control of that side of things. But myself in particular, I was not happy that we were paying salaries and no income coming through. Because of what I'd been through, that to me, these disasters. So, and we had 2 salespeople, and IT salespeople are not cheap. So I thought, nah, I'm not having any of this. We shut it. I would get rid of them. We shut it unless they get a contract, right, in the next couple of months. That's it.
How long did you give it?
In total, it had a year. And Andre agreed with me. Mark wanted to give it more time. Jackie, she's always has been worried about money for side of things, regardless anyway. So she always looks after the bank account.
Someone needs to.
Exactly. So we were all in agreement that if we didn't get some sales coming in very soon, then we would just close the company. That's exactly what we did.
Did you make a loss that year then?
On that company, yes, we did, but because it was financed out of one of the other companies.
Do you regret now closing that down? Do you think it could have been different?
No, I don't regret it. Didn't understand it. So,
right.
I think if you don't understand the business you're in, why are you there?
No, definitely. Do you think you could have brought someone in who did understand it, who would have then been able to propel it forward?
I think that would have been possible, but as you rightly said about being spread too thin, I focused very much on the utilities and telecom side. I couldn't do something else well. Whereas that was kind of Mark's responsibility, really, was dealing with that side of things. And he couldn't make it work. And he was a pretty good salesperson as well. So, but he lacked the technical knowledge as well. We both did. So that's kind of really where it didn't work.
And did you sort of see that as a failure, or was that business an experiment, so therefore it wasn't sort of seen as a failure?
Didn't see it as a failure. Learning experience. In business, you'll go through many, many different learning experiences. Were we spreading ourselves too thin? Were we trying to do too many things? Did we taking on things we didn't really understand? There's a great, what do you call it? Mnemonic KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. You have to keep. don't overcomplicate things. Don't try and do things that you're not familiar with. Whilst on certain occasions you've got to go out of your comfort zone, definitely. But in a business, if you're trying to start a business you know absolutely nothing about, you're going to come unstuck.
And when you closed that business down, was there any sort of fallout? Was there any sort of fallout because you'd made a loss? Was there any financial implications of that?
No, because at the time we had quite a lot of income coming through from the other companies, the other two companies. So yeah, it was annoying that we'd lost money, but luckily we had that cushion of the money constantly coming through every week from the other 2 companies.
And was anyone kind of from your leadership team disappointed that it didn't work? Did that cause any friction?
Yeah, I think Mark was certainly disappointed. And in fact, shortly after that he left us, he went to work for a telecommunications company, oddly enough, in the city.
Right.
He was taken on as MD there. So, yeah, I think Mark was a little bit disappointed at the time.
Did that lead to him leaving?
Part and parcel. There was a few other issues as well, I think, at home that he needed. He was used to earning a very good salary. He came to work with us, and he wasn't earning anywhere near as much. So I think there was pressure from family as well that he needed to get back up to the kind of income level he was used to.
Right. Is that because there was so many of you as directors, and you had to sort of spread the sort of salaries?
Too many. That was another lesson learned, that I needed to. If you think back to what I was saying about I needed to have people there. There was things I couldn't do on my own. I couldn't open a bank account. I couldn't be on the bank account. I couldn't be a director of the company either. So I had to have other people there. And on reflection, too many. So probably could have just been 1 or 2 of us. In fact, that's how it ended up. Me and Jackie.
So that's really great insight, actually, isn't it? Because what you're saying is you're essentially linking the having too many directors, and obviously your other director leaving, to actually your bankruptcy. The reason you had so many directors was because of your bankruptcy. I suppose there wasn't any other way of doing that, was there?
No. What do you think? One of the most basic things in a business, you need a bank account. You can't operate, can you? So, and the fact I couldn't open a bank account is a huge blocker.
Because they obviously taken your personal name into consideration when, in putting out you as a signatory.
Yep.
And when he left, did that cause some sort of big problems?
No, I think by the time Mark left, my credit score had been rebuilt because obviously I was renting somewhere. I'd managed to get my first credit card again, just to start building up credit. Like we teach a lot of people these days, you need to build up a credit history. And then I can't remember what year it was. Managed to get back on the housing ladder again. Well, I think
right.
it was,
right.
Actually, it's 1999.
So what did that take you? How many years did that take you to?
Overall, about 6 years.
Right.
To actually manage to get credit, get a mortgage, and move into a bigger house than I had previously.
And you mentioned earlier about you felt you should have gone down the bankruptcy route. Do you still feel that? Do you think that would have been the better decision?
Financially, yes. From a pure financial point of view. And then, sounds terrible. It means I wouldn't have had to pay back all the money I did. But also, my credit record would have been repaired earlier. Because the paying back people, that was over a 4 or 5 year period. So my credit record during that time was never going to get repaired. Whereas with bankruptcy, it's a total line drawn under it. Then you've got 6 years from then.
But would a bankruptcy had any impacts on you starting any businesses?
No, it's potentially would have affected me later in life. So when I got into property, for example, yeah, I mean that would definitely have affected me.
But you still think you should have taken that route
at the time? Yes. When I look back at it, I think I was advised incorrectly.
Right.
But hey, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
No, absolutely. So you obviously had the bankruptcy and everything on all the fallout of that, and then you obviously had this IT business which kind of closed down. Have you had any other sort of moments of sort of big mistakes or big failures as well that you kind of want to share?
Not mistakes. I make mistakes every day. Oh wow! I suppose.
Because I know you started a lot of businesses, so have they all gone? Have they all gone successfully? Obviously, we've kind of touched on one, but was there any others?
Yeah, no, there was one other, which was in the telecommunications sector. So it was another company we had. Now here, this was at a time when, if you were calling I'm trying to think now which area it was. If you were calling a mobile number from a landline, it used to be really, really expensive, unlike today.
Yeah.
So there was technology that was developed called SIM farms, where essentially it was a bit of tech where you put 20 SIM cards into it. It linked into a telephone exchange up in the city, so that essentially you would dial mobile to mobile, which was the cheapest way of routing it. So we had a routing number, so when someone dialed, it automatically connected into the SIM farm and dialed the mobile number. So that went really well.
I think I'm following.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That went really, really well. We actually took off like amazing. Seriously. So we had.
What year are we in now? And have you got the other companies?
Yes. No. We've got the other companies. This we decided to do a separate one to the telecommunications company, just purely because it was mobile for one, and the tech was quite a lot different. And we had something like 20 of these SIM farms. So if you can imagine, roughly between 20 and 40 SIM cards in each SIM farm times by 20.
Yeah. Okay.
And the traffic going through them all the time. And what happened was we got hit by a misbilling situation. So we were billing our customers, that was fine, based on the data that we were provided by O2. Sorry, a reseller of O2. The data was incorrect. And O2 had underbilled us by something like £250,000.
Wow.
Which was a big shock to us. So we then went into a long argument with them over about 3 or 4 month period saying, well, that doesn't match with our data, because we had the data as well, because we had our own telephone exchange, which the SIM cards were connected to. We could dispute their data, but from their point of view, we couldn't. So, well, no, our data is from network, yours is connecting into the network. The two should surely match. And despite several arguments, they then decided to issue proceedings against the company. And we didn't just suddenly couldn't make up £250,000 there and then. They issued a statutory demand to the company, which essentially means you got 10 days to pay. We couldn't. We tried to reach an arrangement with them, say, look, if you allow us to keep going, we worked out a payment plan. So we would pay £50,000 a month off of that. So 5 months clear, which they initially agreed to. And then 1 month in, total change.
Can they do that, though, after making an agreement?
They did.
Or was this a bit of a David and Goliath situation? I mean, obviously, O2 were maybe a little bit smaller back then.
Well, it was a reseller of theirs, so it wasn't directly O2 because they didn't have
right.
We couldn't deal directly with them. They had a reseller, quite a large reseller, which is often where a lot of the networks work. They have a reseller that will interact with the consumer end of the market or business end of the market. So they're dealing with one company, which is essentially what we did with our telecommunications company. We were a reseller, so the telecommunications company dealt with us. We built the customers for them.
Yeah. So what did you do? How did you come up with the rest of the cash?
We said, look, if you continue with the proceedings, we will close the company. And because, here's where you've got to be a little bit careful if you're in that situation, because we'd done nothing wrong. It was a misbilling on their part, not ours. We'd worked out what everything should be based on our SIM phones, which should have been correct. They should have matched, but they didn't. So we were working essentially, according to them, off false data by this reseller.
How long was that going on for? Like, how long were you working off false data for?
Probably 18 months.
Wow. A long time. Was there anything that you could have foreseen that you were actually working off false data?
No. Because the technology we had at our end, the telephone exchange that we linked in, which is, there's lots of them in the city and other cities, Manchester and so on, where you essentially plug in a network cable and connect everything up. So that was proved technology. But there is a different end to the story. So although they ended up closing our company, we learned that after 18 months later, they successfully sued O2 for wrong billing and recouped £2 million from them. By which time, of course, our company was already closed.
So so you should have claimed some of that money back from them from that lawsuit?
Yeah, but the company was closed. Nothing we could do.
Wow. So, because the other question was thinking, could you have taken court proceedings out against them at the time to then help delay that payment? Because essentially, if it's a misbilling, then could you have taken them to court like they did with O2?
Because we couldn't prove that they had the raw data directly from the O2 network, which we were relying on our data, and so they were saying ours was wrong. But they successfully used the data that we provided them with to sue O2, which took them another 18 months, but they got a settlement from O2 for incorrect billing.
So it never was in the conversation that you could take it further and take it to court?
No, because of the statutory demand, we were limited with time.
So so you obviously lost that company and by the sounds of it, well, did you lose the $250,000 or did you not have to pay it out because you closed it?
Well, they forced us to close. We had no option. In fact, they were the ones that closed the company. We didn't. So they forced the closing of the company, which then went into the insolvency service because owing £250,000. And I was interviewed by the insolvency service in London as a director of the company.
And talk me through that. It's something I know nothing about. So is that because they need to understand the reasons for the insolvency, and is it to essentially look for any potential wrongdoing and fraud? Is that what they're trying to,
as a director of a company, if you've done something wrong and the company loses money as a result, and then you end up closing the company owing people money, potentially you are personally liable. So when I was interviewed by the insolvency service, I laid the blame fairly and squarely on this O2 reseller. Their data was wrong, and we had done nothing wrong. And well, they must have believed us, because I was certainly not sued for anything after the company was closed.
And what was the fallout from losing that company and obviously all of that, I suppose, pressure at the time?
The fallout was we stopped the SIM farms. But that was it, really. There was no other fallout. We focused on a different part of telecommunications, which we still had our other company for. So that was still going, that was still thriving. And at the end of the day, the only losers were us at the time, because we had to close the company. The O2 reseller didn't lose any money because they got £2 million back from O2, because we weren't the only company that they were dealing with that had SIM farms.
So was there no fallout because essentially you had the other businesses which were going really well, and that kind of softened the blow, and this was the sort of smaller growing company that you essentially lost?
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, because if you think about it, we still had the revenue from that company, and we'd had that revenue come in, we'd paid bills out of it and so on, because that's sudden shock of getting a £250,000 bill that we weren't expecting. And then getting the statutory demand 10 days, like, well, hang on a second, give us time to pay. We'll work this out.
Yeah. Did you have to make a lot of people redundant?
No, because it was a limited number of staff. And because our companies worked out of one office, they were interchangeable, essentially. So we had kind of like central admin, which worked for all companies. So it just means we diverted them onto one of the other companies.
Okay. That's good. So all of these experiences and, in those failures and the issues that you've kind of faced, what did you learn from all of that, and how have you kind of incorporated those lessons in, your businesses to date?
I think it does make you a little bit cautious as a business person, or more cautious, I should say, and certainly to think more before jumping into things. But I think when I look back and at the two failures there, what was wrong? Well, on one of them, absolute nothing. Billing issue, so we didn't really do anything wrong there. And the IT one, we went into a business we didn't understand. So, learn from that. Don't do something you don't understand. And I think that's kind of like Warren Buffett says, isn't it? If he doesn't understand it, you won't invest in it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, the same kind of principle applies, and I think that's in any business. If you're going to start a business, you need to understand the business you're going into, and all the ins and outs of what it is and how to make money out of it. Otherwise, you'll fail. So from that perspective, it's kind of, that was the learnings. But in terms of fallout, I don't think there really was any fallout.
And how was there any other sort of learnings that you took forward? You mentioned about being cautious. What did then that kind of caution look like? Did that then change any of your decision making kind of going forward? Did you take less risks?
I think, decisions became a little bit more of committee type decisions rather than let's just go for it kind of decision, depending on where it was. So, whose level of expertise it was. But when it came down to me and Jackie, we always consulted each other. So if I had an idea for something, I'd always consult with Jackie. If we didn't have agreement, we didn't do it.
So before that, you didn't have that, I suppose, decision-making process?
We had decision-making process, but often it was me putting forward the ideas. And I was struggling to get their agreement. So when we started the telecommunications company and we were selling telephone lines, for example, which was the dominance of BT at the time, but they were then allowing resellers to sell telephone lines. And I said, look, we've got to do this. This is, again, it was a market opportunity. It was first mover advantage. You could start to do exactly what BT were doing. So you become a carrier. And they didn't get it at all. I struggled for time and time and time to try and say, come on, let's get this going. All I did, what it taught me actually was to, one, due diligence, right? Getting all my stuff together. I say, here's the stuff, right? Here's the data. Here's the reasons why we should be doing it. Let's go to a meeting with BT. Come on, they're doing this meeting in Heathrow or Gatwick or whatever. Let's go down there and you see for yourself and tell me.
So make a bit of a business case.
Exactly. And you tell me if we come out of that meeting, you don't think it's a good idea, then fine, I'll drop it.
So it sounds like you've always been the one that's driving everything, whether it's making, I suppose, decisions to be self-employed and take the plunge there and take risks in terms of, your spending, and then I suppose pushing your businesses forward and pushing your directors and co-directors forward and, into new markets. It sounds like, there's a lot of ambition and drive there. Where do you think that's come from?
Yeah, to be honest, apart from what I've said about the couple of mentors that I've had, I think really it's just down to my childhood. I think, I was one of four boys, but the other three were stepbrothers. So I was from previous marriage, as was my sister, but my sister was taken into care when she was, I think it was 10. So I didn't see her from about the age of 10. And so I was treated differently. And, simple things. My brothers used to get pocket money. I didn't. Hence, I wanted money because I needed pocket money to buy sweets at school.
Yeah.
Little things, but I didn't have that.
Like every kid does, yeah.
I couldn't buy the things from the tuck shop because I didn't have any money. So that was my driver to find a part-time job. The paper round is actually what I did first of all, to earn some money. So I think part of it's from that. And then, I still get on with my stepmother, but it's her really, to a degree, I've got to thank for giving me that ambition to want to achieve more, because I wasn't getting it. I wasn't getting that thing. And oddly enough, and this is going to sound really weird, right? Even today, I still do not think I have achieved enough. I've done well by many people's standards, don't get me wrong. But for me, it's not enough. I don't think I have achieved anything at all.
You're still trying to, well, what is that? What are you still trying to prove, I suppose? And who are you trying to prove it to, I think?
Well, I think a lot of people have asked me that question. And I guess to a degree to prove to my stepmother that I am worth something, that I'm actually not a no good person. I wasn't an easy child. I was in trouble a lot. And I was told nothing would ever become good of me. So I think partly that, partly my dad dying when I was 25, and then I'm suddenly being leaned on as the eldest person in the family, essentially. And I had to take care of my dad's funeral, dealing with my dad's debts. I paid off my dad's debts. I didn't tell anybody. This is the first public time I've actually said that, actually. I think I've seen what getting into debt for people what can happen. So all those kind of things culminates in me thinking, even now, people ask me why am I still working? I did retire actually when we sold the telecommunications company. I got bored. The
classic entrepreneurial thing, getting bored.
My friends have now retired from work because we're all in our 60s now, early 60s. They've retired from work. They said, "Why are you still working, Mark?" I said, "What do you do all day, Bob?" "Play golf." "Great. What else do you do?" "Nothing." So I get to meet people that I enjoy talking to. I get to do deals, which excites me. I can go on holiday anytime I like, anywhere I like, buy what I like, roughly, within reason, rather than being sat at home or playing golf all day. To me, seems utter boredom.
And as I say, the classic entrepreneurial thing, getting bored and continually and working. And that's kind of, interesting why I asked that question earlier about, have you always been an entrepreneur and being that when you were 16 having 3 jobs, and now you're in retirement age and you're still being an entrepreneur. And there is obviously, and then I think you've kind of touched on it. You are still driving because you feel you still have something to prove. That'd be fair.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I got an offer accepted last week on a deal, and so I've got 2 more out there that looks like they're going to be accepted as well. So I get excited by it. The deal side of things is what excites me more than anything. The money is the byproduct of getting the deal, but it's the deal side.
And is that your sales, head coming out, back to that psychometric testing earlier?
I think
you kind of, the endorphins are going.
Yes. Yeah, and it's why I enjoy mentoring people as well, because I get the kick out of pushing them to get the deal, to get the deal. You've got to, at the end of the day, if you don't sell a product or service, where are you making money? So in the property industry now that I'm in, it's slightly different. Obviously, we're buying a product, but we're going to resell it at some point. So we need to make money on that. We're going to sell it. We need to make money on it.
Out of all of these sort of challenges that you've had and those sort of low points that we talked about, what have you learned about yourself?
Yeah, I think I've learned to take things a little bit slower. Not that much slower, but a little.
It doesn't sound like it. You're not fully retired yet. Yeah,
slower. I think that if don't do things I don't enjoy, which I have done in the past. I've done things, but because they made money, I did them. But don't now. I can say I don't do things unless I enjoy doing it. But I am excited by opportunities. That's just what's in me. If I see an opportunity, I'll say, okay, what can we do with that? And the money side is part of it, I guess, because there needs to be some reward at the end of it, definitely. And if it wasn't worth doing, you wouldn't do it. But there's also the challenge aspect of things as well. When I was younger, most men retired and died within 2 years. That's still a fairly common statistic.
Yeah, definitely.
Why? Because they've stopped.
Is that what you're afraid of?
Yeah. I don't want to stop. Why would I stop? As long as I enjoy what I'm doing, why would I stop?
You talked about doing things that you didn't enjoy. Was that the IT business, or was there other things that you got into that you weren't really enjoying? You just, as you said, motivated by the financial reward.
Yeah, I think the IT was one. There was initially, when we first did a stab at the telecommunications side of things, I did not enjoy that at all. I struggled with it. I didn't understand it initially, and I thought, no. It was a different part of the telecommunications we ended up doing, but it was one part. I thought, oh God, no. And because I was essentially doing most of the sales, if I stopped it, that's it, stopped. Yeah.
Right, the pipeline stopped.
Yeah, pipeline stopped. So, and that particular part, it did. We stopped doing it because I just refused. I said, I'm not doing it anymore. Right, I'm finding it hard. I can't get across the reasons why someone should buy from us at that point. I'm not understanding enough. So again, not understanding enough. That changed as the telecommunications stuff that we were doing grew. We got to understand more about the telecommunications company, and then we went back into that same kind of area later on, but I understood an awful lot more.
How did you recover, I suppose, your kind of confidence and, I suppose, from that personal challenge of being bankrupt, and your kind of life is, being such severely kind of disrupted? How did you recover and kind of keep going and sort of, I suppose, build resilience?
That was hard. I think when I split with my wife, and then my daughter got to stay with her, that was probably the hardest time of my life. And it's very difficult to remain positive in that kind of environment. And I think I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to give up on things, but at that point in life I did. And as I said to you, I was a little bit suicidal, like drinking a lot, I kind of, which is a kind of never-ending spiral kind of thing. And I think what helped was meeting my then partner, a new partner. That kind of gave me a new belief system. I guess I suppose what I'm really trying to say is that I needed to have someone else to believe in me.
Right.
Someone that didn't have to understand what I was doing, but believed that I could do it. And that...
What? Life?
Yeah. Just and whatever it was, starting the company, whatever, that I could actually do it, and I could do things and make a success of it, and having someone else there to say, fantastic, well done, or what's gone wrong? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Because not having someone to talk to is terrible. I've got a partner now. She doesn't understand much about what I do, but she always asks, "How's it going? Is there a problem there with that still, or have you found a way around it?" She'll always ask me. That's asked with her, So it's kind of having that kind of other person, and that can be a partner, it can be a friend, a mentor, someone that believes in you is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, was your business partners not that when they're not able to, I suppose, provide that personal support as well as business support? I mean, it sounds like your other director, Mark, was obviously a big support at the time. I presume they believed in you.
I believed in my ability, yes. Obviously, they because of my background prior to meeting them, I was a little bit wary as well. So it did, in my mind, slow things down quite a lot to begin with, because I wanted to do things, but I couldn't do them. Yeah, because the one I needed to check with them, but I just financially couldn't do. I couldn't. I had no say over the bank account. I wasn't director of the company, so
right. You had less power and control.
So I had to rely on other people. And yeah, I think as time went on, when they started to see the sales coming through on things, they realised that I actually was quite good at what I was doing.
Did they? You mentioned about them being wary. Did that ever get talked about? Did they treat you differently because of your the background and the near bankruptcy?
Well, yes and no. I think little things. I was the last one to get a company car, for example.
Right.
Even though I was the sales out going seeing people. So.
Okay, yeah, you need to make a good impression.
Need to make a good impression. So I drove around in an old Volvo at the time.
Right.
But, those things have to be dealt with.
Yeah, I don't know if that's sometimes a good thing for a sales director to have an old battered car. I don't know if that presents a good impression or a bad impression, or I'm not sure. What do you think? Is it best to have a flashy sports car as a sales director, or is it better to have something that's battered and you're spending all of your company resources on the clients?
Yeah, nothing too flash, but I mean, I would never park outside the customer's house anyway. So
yeah,
the cars looked good to the employees, definitely, so they could see, company successful,
status,
rewards, and status kind of thing. But from a customer's perspective, when I was out visiting customers, I never parked outside the customer's house.
What is all this challenge taught you about business and life?
I think with business, too many people give up too soon. And if you stick at it long enough, if you believe in what you're doing and you stick at it long enough, you will succeed. Time is the only variant, right? If you've got, you're good at whatever it is, you've got a good product or service, then if something's not going right, fix it. Find out what's not going right. Because if you stick at it long enough, it will work. The majority of businesses fail within their first 2 to 3 years because people give up. If they just stuck at it, got some advice, maybe got a mentor, whatever, to fix whatever the issue is that's causing it not to work at that point, they will succeed. And that, I firmly believe that. I think if you long enough at something, as long as you get down the right path, that's the right ad, as long as you're down the right path and fixing things that don't quite work, adapting, you will succeed. In life, I've made lots of life mistakes. I'm on my third relationship, and I would say my best one now. I found somebody that kind of understands me. I'm not an easy person. I know that. I can be difficult. And as a father of 3 kids as well, I don't see as often as I'd like. But, there's a price I've paid for the way I am. I'm not saying that's because I'm in business, just it's the way I am. Trying to retrieve that, I think is difficult. It's one of my biggest regrets. I didn't spend more time with the kids when they were growing up. Now they're a bit older. Again, not being able to have the time with them. I do regret that a lot.
Is that because you were working so much?
Yeah.
Could it have been any different?
It could have been, but would I have won?
I mean, what could have that looked like? I mean, what sacrifices would you have had to make on the business side in order to have more time with the kids?
Well, that's the big unknown. That's the thing. I'm lucky because I worked from home, so I got to see the kids growing up. I used to take them to school every day when they were tiny. As they got bigger, that became more difficult because then we had to drive to get them to school. So, and then I was, the hours I was working, we go into an office then, so I was working longer hours. I'd leave early in the morning, come back late at night. So the amount of time I was spending was less and less and less. And the only other time I got to spend with them really was when I was off Christmas and holidays. And it wasn't enough. I think it was, I regret that. Could I have made everything else a success alongside it? I probably could have done. I know I could have done. I just think it's the way my mind was so focused on things. It's only later you realise actually I made a big mistake there.
Just kind of wrapping up now and kind of a few more questions. What advice would you give to new entrepreneurs about how to handle the fear of failure?
Well, first of all, seek out someone that you can talk to. Now, often we refer that nowadays as a mentor, coach. Find somebody that you can bounce things off, right? Because it might sound total madness to you, but to them, it won't, because they don't necessarily understand what you're doing. But having a bouncing board, and that could be a partner, wife, husband, whatever, right? Have someone. But trying to do everything on your own is really, really hard. Very few people, really, really successful entrepreneurs, like Sir Richard Branson, Lord Sugar, they've always had somebody else with them. What they call their sidekick. There's always been someone else there, but they've been able to bounce things around with. They were the entrepreneur, yes, but they couldn't have done it on their own. So,
do you think it has to be someone neutral, or does it have to be? Can it be someone in the business? Can it be a business partner?
I think business partners hold yourselves accountable in different ways. I think it really depends on your skill sets as well. Me and Jackie work well together because our skill sets are totally different. So that does depend. But so you can talk to each other in a different way you can talk to, say, your husband and wife. But I think having someone independent outside of that is even better. Someone that has no financial interest in what you're doing, that can actually give you an impartial look at things.
No, that's great. Is there anything else other than getting a mentor in terms of that fear of failure? Because as you said, it's with so many businesses failing within a short space of time after starting, then that's why new entrepreneurs will get put off, because they don't want to be one of those.
I think also you need to associate with like-minded people, because the fact of the matter is not everybody's an entrepreneur, and most people will knock what you're doing, even your family. Okay? The belief is not there because you're just starting. Why are you doing that? Why have you left this safe, secure job to start a business that they don't understand, because they've had jobs all their lives? Majority of people have had jobs. You're now making a big step, decision to change your life one way or the other. So mixing with other like-minded people, so that could be a business networking event, because business people, we're all the same. We all have these doubts in our minds. There are many, many business networking events out there that are well worth going to. Go to events that improve your mind. I've done Tony Robbins a couple of times. I did the Firewalk with Tony Robbins. That was a mind-blowing experience. If you could walk across hot coals, it shows you can do anything. So
100%.
Those kind of things is what I'd say. Is surround yourself by like-minded people. Get rid of the red lighters. Now, if your red lighter is your husband or wife, that's a really difficult thing.
You've got a problem. Yeah.
So you've got to try. You just don't talk business around them. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's really sage advice. If you could go back in time and, look at any of these failure moments and low points, would you stop them from happening? Would you completely erase them from actually occurring?
I think each low point teaches you a lesson. I think there are things you learn from every kind of low point. Would I change them? Of course. I mean, if I could have changed them, I would. But would I be where I am now? I don't know. That's the thing, isn't it? You just never know. Whether you change something else in your life, where would you be now? If I'd taken that job in Hong Kong as a stockbroker, where would I be now? Who knows? So I think, life is what it is. You can't change what's happened in the past. All you can do is change what you're doing now and change your future. And that's exactly what I did. I changed myself for the better. I think I'm a better person, a business person as well. As an individual, I'm more rounded than what I was before. But that comes with life anyway. The older you get, the more experience you have, the more life experiences you have as well. So there's a good reason why, going back hundreds of years, why the older people in the villages were the sages, if you like, because they'd experienced much more life than you had. I mean, when you're young, you're exuberant, you're full of confidence, you want to go out and change the world. And then you get older and you learn from things that perhaps didn't work out, or things that did succeed, and repeat the successes. So you learn. That's the nature of us being as human beings, isn't it? We learn. Well, hopefully we learn from things that we did wrong in the past.
And I feel that's what this podcast has been today. Actually, I'm learning from my elders today, and all of the the ups and downs that you've had. It's been fascinating. So we are going to do a quick fire round.
Okay.
And so these are short questions and obviously short answers. So failure is
not acceptable.
Not acceptable. Interesting. I'm just going to take a deviation here. Well, why not acceptable? Given what we've been discussing today.
Yeah, I think if you go into something with failure in your mind, then you will fail. So that's what I mean. Is if you're starting a business and you think, "Am I going to fail?" Get rid of it out of your head, because you will. There's very briefly, there's a motivational thing that I listen to very, very frequently. Talks about two things: the thinker thinks and the prover proves. If you think you're going to be a failure, the other part of your mind will say you're a failure. So that's what I mean by not acceptable.
Great. What is your life's mission?
To leave my kids with the lasting impression that their dad did all he could do to make a better life for them.
Amazing. What's one piece of advice that you want to give when you're on your deathbed?
That's a hard one. Don't change who you are just because other people say you should change. Always be yourself and go out and do what makes you happy.
Name one habit that keeps you resilient.
I don't read the news.
Yeah, me too. It's empowering, isn't it? If you could be immortal, would you take it?
If everybody else was immortal, yeah.
Just think how many deals you could do.
Absolutely.
What's one surprising fact that not many people know about you?
One surprising fact. When I was 15, I was chess champion at school.
Of the school?
Yeah.
Wow. You're a multi-talented person. And what's one guest or number of guests that you could recommend that you think I should have on this podcast?
Do you want me to name them?
Yeah.
Okay. So of people that you may or may not know, I would certainly have Emmanuel Ezekiel. If you can get him, Paul Merrick, but I'm not sure he's got a failure to talk about. I'm not sure. Trying to think of other people I know. They would probably be top of my list.
Why Paul Merrick if he hasn't got a failure?
Fantastic business person.
He must have some failures in there somewhere.
He doesn't see them as failures. He won't see them as failures.
No, but that's what I mean. All business people have ups and downs in their careers. So.
He would take it as a learning experience.
Definitely. Okay, great. Thank you for those. So, Mark, where can people find you and connect with you?
If you want to connect with me, just look for me online. Just look for Mark Lloyd on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. You'll find me. Google me. If you Google Mark Lloyd property, you'll find me. If you just Google Mark Lloyd, you'll find an excellent Michelin star chef. Now, whilst I'm very good at cooking, Michelin star.
So you need to put the property bit in, right? Because it's always dangerous Googling someone's name because it's invariably, unless you're really famous, doesn't turn up with your name. But just add the property. So Mark Lloyd property in all good websites and search engines. So Mark, it's been a great conversation, and thank you for being so honest and giving such a great insight to all of the challenges that you faced. And I know we've touched on some difficult subjects today, so I really appreciate you being so honest with everyone, and I'm sure everyone listening will get so much out of this. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Fail. Really hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. Please do subscribe to the show and leave us a review. It really does help us to grow and to reach more people. Do follow us on social media too. We're at Jeswood on Instagram and at Beyond the Fail on YouTube and also on Linktree. Thanks again and see you soon.